So he went from post to post to post. Some guys were wiping his forehead. Some guys patting him on the back, screaming and cheering, but he did it by himself. And he finished the job, 20 something more telephone poles. He just rips out of the ground.
Jeez.
So I'm 8. I don't have the thought capacity yet to articulate all that's going on in that moment. To me, it's just, this is the Miller legacy on display. It felt bigger than his superhuman feat. It felt like this is us, not just him. So he walks over and he puts the towel on the table. It's the donuts and hot chocolate table where I'm stationed. And he starts picking splinters out of his arms and leans down and gives me a big bicep flex. And he said, "Son, don't you ever forget, dynamite always comes in small packages."
Hey there, this is Barb Allen. I am very excited to be here today with our guest, Stephen Miller, who I had the great honor of meeting last year, no pun intended, I guess, at the Greater event in McAllen, Texas, when I got to share the stage with Stephen and his son and a whole host of other amazing people, including Marie Cosgrove, the host, Nick Wojcik, one of the phenomenal speakers there, and one of my longtime people I've looked up to. And since then, I've had the pleasure of following Stephen online and seeing all the incredible things he does as a man of faith and just as a humble, spiritual human being who, when you sit down, you talk to you, Stephen, you would never guess that you're like this ridiculously insane beast who can do the things that you do because you're just so down to earth about all of it. And it's phenomenal. I think you reinforce the fact that you just never know who you're sitting by, who you're walking past, who you're standing next to, right? You just never know. Stephen, I'm not even going to go into your whole martial arts expert's resume, the fact that you are still standing 5 world records you've got to your credit. I'm going to let you talk about all of that and your history and how you got into that. Then we're going to talk about the things you're passionate about now, today, which is what you were just sharing with me before we started recording. I'm excited to get to it all, and I'm very happy that you stuck with us throughout this process, and we have you here today with us.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be on the interview with you.
So let's go back through your story to get you to where you are today. And then we're going to get really into your retreats that you have coming up and the new book you have coming out. Okay. So let's go back to your history. As a young boy, I think you had this moment. Let's go to where you're 8 years old. Can you share that story that happened with your dad? You
remembered. That's awesome.
Of course, it's a powerful story.
Well, it's like, so when I've studied, as you have as well, great people that make an impact. There's always a moment or two somewhere in their life that they can point to, and it's their own personal BC, before and after. There's life as it was up to that moment, and then there's life looking completely different after that moment. Whether it's, a grade school teacher that believed in them, or, some traumatic thing that changed the trajectory of their life. Great people have those moments. And then, so what happens is when you start studying those moments in people, you realize that those life-changing moments, I call them dynamite moments. Shameless plug. It's what my first book is about. These dynamite moments have a certain anatomy to them. There's always certain things that were present, certain things that were just, like the perfect storm. And when you learn that, then instead of sitting around the rest of your life waiting for your magic moment, you start going out and creating great moments. So my father created one for me when I was 8 years old, as you referred to. And, my father was one of the original guys, a Navy frogman, UDT team, special forces guy. And I was 8 years old. I was small for my age, nothing exceptional about me. But my dad it was a work day at the church that we attended. And the objective for the men was to remove these telephone poles that were surrounding the property. It was a 3-strand barbed wire fence. Essentially, they're telephone poles about 6 feet tall, wires from each one. And so one guy had this commercial flatbed truck that he was backing into a post several times, pull around to the other side, back into. They were trying to loosen the pole up so they could put a chain around it and pull it out. So they did the first couple of poles, and each one took like 25 minutes to get out of the ground. Clearly, my dad's thought process was, I am not going to stay here for an all-day project that could be done in about 20 minutes.
Oh, goodness.
So he walks over and he puts a towel, drapes it across his chest, walks over to a telephone pole that they had not yet loosened. And he squats down and gives it a big bear hug. And he screams this scream that would raise the hair on your neck. And he stands straight up and rips this post out of the ground. It freaked everybody out like you can't imagine. It was mass pandemonium erupted. And of course, then my dad's adrenaline was just, off the charts. So he went from post to post to post. Some guys were wiping his forehead. Some guys patting him on the back, screaming and cheering, but he did it by himself. And he finished the job. 20-something more telephone poles he just rips out of the ground. Jeez. So I'm 8. I don't have the thought capacity yet to articulate all that's going on in that moment. To me, it's just, this is the Miller legacy on display. It felt bigger than his superhuman feat. It felt like this is us, not just him. So he walks over and he puts the towel on the table. It's the donuts and hot chocolate table where I'm stationed. And he starts picking splinters out of his arms and leans down and gives me a big bicep flex. And he said, son, don't you ever forget, dynamite always comes in small packages.
It's great.
It took him 8 seconds to say that, but Barbara, literally, that is what set the trajectory for my life. This unshakable, uncommon sense of, I would call it modest confidence, because it's really off the charts confidence, but minus the nauseating attitude that usually comes along with that.
Yeah, it's not boastful. It's just factual. It's hey,
just, it's like that. My dad did that. It's in my genes. I can't help this. I was born for this kind of thing,
Yeah. That's
so
great.
That just started it. And from then on, I was never the biggest guy in the school, but I was always the guy, excelling in every sport, setting state records in, every sport. Just anything that I thought I wanted to do that I tried. Of course, and right about that time is when he started me off in martial arts. And, I'm 55 now. I've never been out of that. So I should have learned a little something by now.
I think you've learned more than a little something. I mean, where you've gone. So what did you make it through high school? And I mean, did you see yourself going where you are now? Or did you have other plans? Did your life take some turns along the way?
Well, no, I just kind of, there's a couple of principles that my dad would share with me that have been a part of, directing the path. One is, he said, son, if you don't spend your life on something that will live longer than you, then you will have wasted your time. And of course, he was referring to mentorship. And he'd say, you got a gift, son. And there's an old saying that says, all the world loves a strong man. And that's true. There's something about, superhuman feats and, physicality of achievements and physicality and all that the world loves. So he'd say, there will always be people following you. Make sure you're leading them in the best direction. So I never took, the world records, the world ranking and the mixed martial arts and all. And I never took that overly serious. What I always saw it as, it just strengthens my platform. Opens the door and gives me more people to talk to. But the real core of my life has always been, I've got something to say, not just something to show. I'll show you something that'll get your attention, and then let's have a conversation.
Right. Yeah, that is a very effective way. If you don't have people's attention first, what's the point, right? And you definitely You had my attention that night, man. You had several thousand people's attention at that event in Texas. It was
Thank you.
amazing. You and your son. So let's talk then about your path you took. You make it, you're growing up, you're a young man. What is the first step you take into the adult world? Did you go get a 9-to-5 job while you were training? What did you do?
I don't do that very well.
I
I'm not a
know.
very good 9-to-5 guy,
Yes.
but I married very young. Married my wife. I was 17. She was
Oh my
18.
goodness.
This year we will celebrate 38 years together.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And uh, I started from in my teen years, which was kind of already living the adult life as a married man.
I'd
But
say.
in those teen years, I was competing in taekwondo stuff all around the world, and at the same time, I was serving as a youth leader in my church. So there was always these parallel tracks.
Yeah.
One complemented and strengthened the ability of the other. Then one thing kind of leads to another. That's the way it's always been. I never sat down. I'm not a big guy on, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. I think, God puts things in front of you, and how you respond to those is what determines what comes next, after that. And so, I was doing the Taekwondo stuff, and I kept getting disqualified from tournaments for excessive aggressiveness. Not angry, not wanting to kill people, but just too intense. I didn't hear the bell, didn't hear the whistle. And so at that time, I had a couple dojos in Orange County, California. So I had this system I had developed called Reality Combat Systems, where all during the week I'm training airline employees, ATF officers in real life combat, hand-to-hand combat and self-defense. And then in the weekends, I'm going to these Taekwondo tournaments. So my promoter at the time said, "Look, this is going to keep happening. There's this thing called no holds barred. It wasn't called MMA yet."
Okay.
And he said, "You just get in a cage and you just start banging it out until somebody gives up." I said, "Man, that's me.
Sign me up.
Sign me up." So he set one up for me, and I got bit by the bug. I did very well. I lost twice in my whole career.
What did you feel after those losses? How was that? Talk about the first loss you had. Was it unexpected?
No, I was more appreciative and kind of shocked that I was immediately at the place I was. And here's the reason. So at that time when I had my first pro MMA no holds barred fight, I had already had 2 world records in hand strength. And so promoters never felt it was fair to match me with somebody my size. They always felt like to create an even fight, they needed to put me across the cage from a giant. So I never fought anybody my size in my whole career. The smallest opponent I ever had. Now look, I'm 5'11", and typically on my fight weight, there weren't weights or weight classes or rounds or anything at that point. So you didn't have to make weight, but my natural weight was about 220. Dan Severn was my second pro fight. He was the reigning world champion in UFC at the time. He's 6'2", 295. I never fought anybody smaller than him. So I was the giant killer.
I'd say.
So then what happens with that? You get, I got about 30, 38, 38 in that sport is an old man. And so I figured I'm going to, take the next chapter. And I had discovered in a training session preparing for my second fight with Dan Severn, I've hired a guy who's known as the master of hand strength worldwide. Dennis Rogers is his name. And he took me through this battery of tests just to kind of see where I was starting. And he kept going, it's all grip elements and hand strength and so forth. So he pointed to a chart. I asked him, I said, "What's all the about?" He said, "Look," he said, "right here, here's where a professional athlete is. Here's where the average guy is. And here's a professional athlete." And he said, "Here's where you just rated in these 4 elements." He said, that's world-class hand strength. And I said, nope, I didn't know that. I mean, I knew I was pretty strong, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So me and Dennis, the mentor that I hired, we actually started doing shows together all around the world. So as a natural, I stepped out of the octagon and went straight into strongman performing. Shows, prisons, church groups, schools, and it just kept going.
So I like what you said that you had mentioned you hired a mentor. I want to hit on that for a minute because it's something that it can be hard to understand why you should get a mentor, why you should invest in a mentor, especially for people who may be struggling on their budget and why should I get a mentor? And for somebody like you at really the top of their field, I think there are some people who would be surprised. Well, why would he hire a mentor? Right. So I love that you did that. Even at that level, you understood the value of getting. Talk about that. Like, how did you decide it was time to get a mentor? How did you pick yours? And what's a pro of getting a mentor that you could talk to people about?
Yeah. The basis of it was, and I know it wasn't original with my father, but everything he said to me kind of sounded original. So yeah. I still credit him. He said this to me one time. He said, if you ever see a turtle sitting on top of a pole, you can safely assume somebody put it there.
It's actually pretty great.
Because turtles don't climb poles.
Yeah.
And of course, my dad was just all about mentoring and not only having mentors, but mentoring others. And so, I started, 20 years ago, I started really developing this concept that ancient Greeks referred to this thing, they call it the metron. The metron is the sphere or the circle from within which every person does life. Everybody has a metron. It's your personal space or your world, right? And it consists of 7 dimensions: spiritual, cognitive, emotional, and then family, social, physical, and finance. Okay. And the perfect man or the complete man is not the guy who's a 10 all the way around, but it's a guy who has equal development all the way around. Because of my role as a professional athlete and a leader in the faith community, is I'm the guy they always called in to talk to a guy who had tremendously excelled in one dimension and was bombing out in another. So, one-dimensional success became something that I was very familiar with in terms of counseling other people. Okay. And it's not success. It's the guy who's got, $20 million in the bank and he's a jerk and has no friends.
Yeah.
Or the guy who's a great family guy and a great husband, but he's going to die 15 years too soon because he's terribly fat, doesn't take care of himself.
Got it.
Or the guy who's a great father, but can never do for his family what he wants to do because he's always broke, paycheck to paycheck. So the model that most of us men especially, but really all of us, the model that we've been taught to follow is in that metron that consists of 7 dimensions that we are responsible for all of them. Typically, people excel in one, maybe another, and then they're terrible in the others.
Yeah.
So I started developing this idea of, creating these systematic ways of approaching your metron. So there's equal development. And if you're a 5 all the way around on a scale of 1 to 10, then, you stand a far greater chance of making progress and succeeding in your life than if you're a 10, then a 2, and a 9 and a 1. Yeah, it's like trying to roll an egg straight. You can't roll an egg straight. It's got to, be spherical. So
that is a great way of explaining it. I've never heard it outlined like that before. And as you're saying it just makes sense. Yes, let's talk about it.
It's called Circle Management.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's basically that it talks about the whole idea of a metron, why it's so important, how they're interconnected, excelling in one, failing in another. It matters because every dimension affects the other and is interrelated. So we talk about all that. And then we talk about the systematic way of living your life so that all of your metron or your dimensions get the same level of attention, time, and effort. And thus, there's this steady growth and development of the entirety of your life rather than just one dimension.
What would you say to somebody right now in the middle of this COVID crisis when we're all supposed to stay home, all the restrictions and all the people have gone out of business, their health is failing, it's just things are sort of coming undone layer by layer by layer in so many people's lives. What would be some advice that you would have for somebody who is now feeling like they're spiraling out of control or teetering on the edge and about to go over and a full-fledged, stressed out, panic, doesn't know what to do?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it is terrible. I have to give myself a serious attitude adjustment in all this because I bounce from, how dare you guys with the conspiracy, and then the anger over, people's lives that are just being absolutely destroyed.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But I would say, like in any other, real catastrophe in life, there are always people that rise up and take their shot in the middle of, catastrophes. In fact, one of the backdrops often for these dynamite moments are very negative and dark times and situations, because we always have a choice in that. We're made to feel like we don't, but there's always a choice. So I think you got to, I encourage people to step back a little bit, separate from the emotional side of things, and goodness, it would be a whole conversation, but it's bigger than just this moment. It feels insurmountable. It feels like it's swallowing us all up, but we're going to get through it. There is going to be life after COVID-19. And for some people, it's going to be bigger and better than ever. Because they're positioning themselves in the middle of all this, I'll give you an example. So right now at our church, we're the only church that we know of, at least in America, that we went out and bought 6 of these big UV-C machines, and it's ultraviolet rays of the highest, kind of technology. They're like $6,000 a piece per machine. And you plug them in between services. We got a very large church. So in between, so you plug them in, these lights come on, and it kills 99.9% of all pathogens in the air.
Crazy.
Because we're trying to make our people feel, comfortable and safe about returning. Now that we're opening back up. So, we're sitting there thinking, looking at this and going, if a guy wanted to buy 1 or 2 of these machines, and when these bars and nightclubs and restaurants start opening up that can't afford a $6,000 machine, a guy could develop a route, of 7, 8 restaurants a night. And just roll in there, and you plug them in, turn these things on. It takes 3 minutes to zap everything in the air.
3 minutes. That's
3
it.
3 minutes.
Wow.
Anything living on the surface, in the air, any pathogen, bacteria is done. So, okay, I can't afford a $6,000 machine, but if I can talk, 15 restaurants into, let me come do your deal for, $100 a week, $200 a week.
Wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah. There's always an opportunity not to capitalize on, because if what you're doing to capture the moment hurts other people, then you're just an idiot.
Yes. There's a fine line, right?
But if you're going to figure something to do some way in this catastrophe that's going to help you and it's going to help other people, then it's a win. And that's what happens in every time that there is, some kind of issue like this.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd be curious to know if anybody listening to that actually goes out and does exactly what you just said.
2 guys in the church already are.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. I'm thinking I got kids who are in college who are, in upheaval. They don't know if they're going back, what's happening. I'm like, hey, boys, I'm thinking that's not a bad idea. That's pretty cool. And I do love that. You have to get creative. You just really need to look around and I've been looking around the world. That's not something that I've come up with in my own world, but that's super cool. Most of the stuff that I think people are leaning towards is online work. How can I be a virtual help? But this is the first one I've heard, concept I've heard about in person. What do you think
Yeah.
about live events? Do you think they're coming back with
I
any
sure
kind of
want them
strength?
to. I
Right.
sure want them to, but I think it's going to be a little while,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
People
You know,
wearing masks and like, can you imagine trying to
yeah,
speak to an audience that's all 6 feet apart, wearing masks, and they're all just like
I'm not
smothered
wearing
by, right? But you're
I'm not
talking to,
wearing one now, so I wouldn't
yeah.
can't.
How do you go out there and speak to people who are uncomfortable, like they can't breathe, they're hot, they're worried, they're upset? I mean, who's gonna grasp any value out of that moment when? And
Yeah,
how do you, as a
because
speaker, capture their attention when they're focused
what
on
I think
comfort?
yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that go
What
ahead.
I think has to happen in this time is, I mean, the hysteria and the fear that is being created in people just by the language we use to describe what we're going through right now. It has to change, and people that are a little more, leveled out in their thinking and their approach and observation of things, they have to talk about it every chance they get.
Yeah.
For example, one, if I may,
Yes, please.
I'm so exasperated hearing this thing called the deadly coronavirus. Deadly? Really? No, if you're out in the jungle by yourself and you get bit by a black mamba, you're probably going to die. That's deadly.
Right.
You're flying in a 747 and it crashes. That's deadly because you're not making it through that.
Right.
But concerning a disease or a viral infection that 99.2% of the people survive it, it's not deadly.
Yeah.
It's deadly to some, but to those some, everything is. A cold, flu,
Right.
it's all deadly. So I think, we have to try to neutralize this crazy fear, because this has done a number on us, on our culture.
Yeah, it's
really
historic
has.
times. I tell my kids, like, you guys are living through history right now. Like ours was 9/11, but this is different. And
Yeah.
woo, crazy, crazy stuff. But speaking of the live events, you are planning your own in-person event based off another book you have. I knew about this book, but I didn't know about the other book you mentioned. Now you have two books coming out.
I don't know. I don't know when the circle management book, when I'm going to have it come out, because you don't want to just, flood the market with all your books at once. But the next book that's coming out, both of these two I finished in quarantine, by the way.
Perfect.
But the next one coming out is called The Adullam Experience.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, the Adullam Experience. Adullam refers to the cave. It was the name of the cave where the ancient King David of Israel, when he was running for his life, he hid in this cave called Adullam. And lo and behold, 400 guys found out he was hiding in the cave. And they were 400 of the most beat up, broken, defeated, depressed guys you can imagine. And they joined him in the cave. Not the kind of guys you want to start a revolution with.
Yeah.
And while we don't know everything that happened inside the cave, what we do know is those are the exact same guys that are now referred to historically as David's mighty men. They were the most fierce, battle-ready, heroic warriors the world has ever known. And so the book, because I think, right now, we all need help, but my lane, so to speak,
right,
and my gift is, I spend all of my time. That's what I serve as in our church. Is I pastor the men. Is the men in America? We need serious help. We're broken. We don't even know what to be. We say, oh, I'm a man and masculine, and we feel guilty because culture's beating us up and assaulting us over masculinity and manhood and all that kind of thing. We don't know what to be. So in the book, I talk about, the ideal man. And some of that also is based on the Metron idea. Right. It's not the guy walking around beating his chest, caveman style, It's the guy, the Renaissance man, who gives equal amounts of attention to all the valuables in his life. You can be all of it. You really can. I'll come back to the book. Well, I'm really kind of talking about the book, but we've not only have we not been shown what a full Metron looks like, we've been taught that all of those are not possible. You need to pick one and then go with it. If you want to build a business and a big empire and get rich, then go do that. If you want to build a family and a great marriage, then do that. But you can't do both.
Yeah. And you can't do them all at once, right? You have to have a system. You can't be working on all these areas.
But you can live systematically in a way that it automatically distributes equal time, attention, and effort to the whole metron, because you can have it all. You really can. To me, all is, you can be a great husband and a great father, and you can make some money and build a business and be in good shape and have a lot of friends and be smart and be in control of your emotion. I mean, you can be all of that. So the book is coming out probably 1st of July, and it's written, it's anybody will benefit from it, but it's written specifically to men. Right. And it will kind of serve as the content basically serves as the foundation of the curriculum for an event that we are going to start doing in the fall. And it's called the Adullam Experience. And what I'm basically doing is taking high net worth guys, CEOs, what have you, not because just the money thing, but I want to talk to influencers, because even influencers are beat up and broken right now. Yeah. We take them off the grid in a retreat out to a ranch for 5 days, take their cell phones away, no iPads, no laptops, no nothing, and put them through this experience for 4 days, which is a cross between SEAL training and a spiritual metamorphosis all in one.
Love it.
And I'm pumped about it.
Yeah, that's great. You are only the second person I've talked to who does something like that for men, with Beatrice Coulion being the first one out in California. But I think it is great that these happen. And I think just by somebody registering for such a thing is a big first step, because it takes a lot to plunk down the money and plunk down the time, and to maybe some men see it as their pride. They don't want to admit that they need the help. So kudos to you for making that happen. I think the ripple effect of that will be people returning to their families, to their communities, strengthening all of that. And I think you're going to see a lot of ripple effect. I'm working on a similar event for women myself, because I haven't seen anybody doing this for women, right? But we'll see. It's all going to be dependent on what you're, allowed to do and how many people you can put in. You can't run that event and have 20 men there on a ranch wearing masks, and we won't be wearing masks. Just not going to happen. The impact is just not going to, it's not going to work that way.
You can't put the gloves on, step into a ring, and then crawl through mud with the mask on.
I mean, seriously, you just can't. So are you going to go ahead and do that no matter what the current regulations are?
I'm not sure. If it was just me,
right,
and I was deciding it, I would. I'd do it next week and find a way. But I have to consider the comfort and confidence level of the people that will be our clientele.
Right.
So we'll see how things continue opening up. At least here in Texas, things are opening up very quickly.
Texas, yes.
Texas is awesome. That's why
I know. I always felt like I should have been born in Texas. I know so many people in Texas. I keep going there, and I'm like, man, you guys, you just get so many things right, I think. We're in New York, so could you pray for us a little bit in New York? Pray for us a lot. We have a few more years till Dave's youngest graduates high school, and then we're freedom bound kind of thing. But so, I would just keep asking those questions because I'm curious. We talk about innovation, and I think one of the things we're going to have to be innovative in is how we do these events, given exactly what you said, the comfort level of attendees. And I don't know what that's going to look like. And I'm asking because I want to see how other people are unfolding and how you're going to do that. Because unfortunately, it's going to be something that we have to put into play when we're planning, whether they have to get tested.
For this event, fortunately, is we're not talking about, bigger is better in terms of big crowd numbers. We will limit this to tops 25 guys at a time. I'll do a lot of them each year, but the magic of the program and its effectiveness I need 25 guys tops or less.
Yeah. And I think that's a good size event. That is a good size event. And I think anything more than that, it's very difficult to give the individualized attention and really, when you're in a group setting, you got this person asking the question, that person, stopping. It's really hard, I think, to get full value out of events. So I think that's a perfect size number. I'm excited to see how
Incidentally, the first full 24 hours of this event, the men are not allowed to talk.
No.
Period.
Come on.
Seriously. They're not permitted to say a word.
No way. Well, then maybe you need, masks on no matter what. Like, I don't know. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Because, the first day is critical. Everybody shows up, all bowed up and, they're in their defense mode.
Yeah.
And then everybody's got advice for the other guy.
That's true.
It's like, listen, just be quiet. For
just
24
receive.
hours.
Yeah. Just receive.
Be quiet and receive. Let's set this thing up. And then, so anyway, I don't tell the whole.
You don't want to give all your secrets away. I'm going to just keep talking and pull it out of you little by little. That's great. So I saw on your website that you're also involved or you're sharing information on another event called Frequent Knock.
Yeah, I'm kind of part of that community. Frequent Knock is an offshoot event of Secret Knock,
right? Which
is an event in San Diego put on by Greg Reed. Greg is, him and Sharon Lecter together are they run the whole Napoleon Hill Foundation.
Okay.
Greg Reed wrote the 100-year anniversary to Think and Grow Rich.
Okay.
So, and it's a great event. It's kind of more of a production. There's some secrecy to it in that it's invitation only. Well, I'll rephrase. To get straight in, smooth sailing, it's invite. Right. You can apply to attend this event, but you got to be able to afford it. And then you have to go, you have to be filtered, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because it's the speakers lineup is ridiculous. And it's guys that get up there and they got 15 minutes. You get Vicente Fox, former president of Mexico, put him on stage. In the average event, he's got 90 minutes.
Yeah.
In this event, he's got 15 because there's 10 more guys coming up that day right after him, all having 15 minutes who have achieved just as much in their area. So anyway, the conversation is high level. The style of delivery is very, bullet point. It's not time to unwrap a lot of it. So you need people that really, can unwrap it and understand it and all that.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a great event.
So you really have your thumb in a lot of different pies, right? That's cool. It's just to be so diverse. I want to talk a little bit about the work you do as a faith leader too, because that is also very important. And I am someone who was raised in the Catholic Church, and I won't go too far into it, but for me, what that experience taught me, it gave me, it instilled a little, some faith foundation, but then it also stifled faith. Yeah. I felt like it made me feel like religion is a great way to ruin faith, like because that was the experience I had. To me, it was an oppressive environment that I just didn't want to be a part of anymore. So I walked away with my faith intact, but after a long battle. So I love to see other communities, other churches, other faiths that really just go all in on the joy and keep it real. Yeah. And it looks really like that's what you all do there.
Yeah. The name of our church is called Inspire Church. Yeah. Inspire means breathed on in Latin. That's where the word comes from. I don't know how to say it. I'm not Latin. Inspire means breathed on by God. And when God breathes on you, it's not a debilitating experience. It's elevating. It's exuberant. It's joy. It's all those good things. But I like the way you said that, because you said something that's key. One of the chapters in my book, Circle Management, is I write about spirituality, because really that's the core. It's the starting point. But spirituality, that chapter is not a chapter about religion.
Yeah.
It's about spirituality and faith. And it has to be a part of the pursuit of your life, because it's core in terms of giving life and breath to every other dimension. Nothing else is automatic, but it certainly becomes easier to develop when you have that intact in your life. And unfortunately, religion has stymied that pursuit in so many people.
Yes. And it's also weaponized, I think, for a lot of political reasons. God has
a lot of misrepresentatives right now.
Yes, he does. And Unfortunately, I've bumped into several of them, but I think so many people have. And I look at some of the videos of your services, and there's bands playing and spotlight, and people are singing. In the church that I grew up in, that would be labeled like blasphemous, almost like disrespectful and all this. So,
you know what I say to that? It's like a puppy dog barking at a passing train.
Yeah, there you go. I think there's just, for me personally, I just feel like I'd rather be with the people who openly express it and on it. Because I know too many people who park their butts in the pews every Sunday, who walk out of there afraid to die, afraid to talk to someone, afraid of this, angry at this, and do terrible things to their neighbors. But I don't know. So I have a great appreciation for how you do it. What is a typical service? If I walk into your church, what am I going to experience?
Oh, wow. It's, it's lights, smoke, big multimedia, 40-foot LED screens going and everything, because, the experience of worship is very critical. And, it has changed over the years, and it has the right to change over the years. There was a time when, an impacting worship moment was everybody coming in with their hands folded and citing the same thing, and some, usually Latin, and just reciting. You could be thinking about whether or not the chicken is burning,
yes,
and still praying.
Yes,
that needed to change.
Yeah,
and so one of the ways, and we're certainly not terribly unique in this, but it's a live experience. Because one of the things that's missing in people's lives when it comes to the pursuit of spirituality is the ability to be awed, AWED. I don't know if I'm saying it clear enough for the microphone, but you can't lose the ability to be awed. And there's all these great scientific experiments that are being done on the benefits of an experience that leaves you in awe. Yeah. And how that dramatically and positively affects the other dimensions of your life. And so to us, any and every experience in going to church can never be just routine and monotonous. It can't, I know what my challenges are, and most people do as well. I don't need to go to church and have somebody tell me how wrong and messed up I am.
Yes.
I got beat up in the cage for a living. I don't want to go to church.
Yes, you did, didn't you?
Well, I mean, I didn't get beat up much. I did the beating, but nonetheless.
I stand corrected.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I'm sorry.
I mean, nobody wants to go to church to be made to feel bad. So to us, it's just very simple. We're building a community of people that are like-minded and love the same things, and that is when you walk into a church service, man, it needs to lift you. The world beats you up, life pulls you down. You need an experience on a regular basis that lifts you above all of that. We want people walking out of our services feeling like they can conquer the world. Yeah, and
that's really
that's
great.
How everything is carefully designed to affect people in that way.
Very
and I'm
cool.
not the senior pastor. I'm an associate pastor. Okay. And I specifically, my lane is I'm the men's pastor.
Okay. All right. Is there a women's pastor? Is that how it rolls?
The women's ministry is led by a committee of ladies.
Okay.
My wife is part of that committee as well.
Very nice.
I should say a team. I don't like committees.
Okay. It is interesting how one word changes the whole connotation of things, right? Yeah, it does change. Committee, team. I like that. Okay. So I need to get to the question that we really enjoy asking our guests, and it's what our podcast is based on. Everything we do is based on this, and why we started it. We started this because we saw the American dream under attack. We saw the American people being ripped apart. Unfortunately, that's only gotten worse in the almost 3 years since we've started this. But we are doing our part to be a solution to that by bringing people like you. You represent the true spirit of the true American. America is full of good people, and that's what we're trying to remind people, and that you can
thank you.
Still achieve.
I share that belief about America.
Yeah, it's still full of good people. We're just being distracted by all the insanity, and now we're being tested as well. So we believe the American dream is alive and well. We're living our version of it, but still looking to build upon that. It's part of that is a responsibility to turn around and help other people find that same path, but we also know it's different for everybody. And that's the key to we meet a lot of resistance because people assume that we're saying that the American dream has to be the white picket fence, the house, all that. It doesn't. Yeah. It's different for everyone. So we want to know what your version of the American dream is. What does that look like for you?
Well, the simple one-word answer is freedom. But freedom, the way that plays out is, I for example, I do a lot of, as you do as well, before quarantine, I do a lot of events. I'm speaking on big stages, and everybody's there because they're chasing after, something. And it usually involves, living in a certain kind of house, driving a certain kind of car. I mean, something that speaks of status and what have you. It's really, when my father, before he passed away on Father's Day, 2 days before Father's Day, 2 years ago, he lived a little farm outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee, very simple house. He lived on Social Security, but lived in such a way he was still able to save money every month on Social Security. So he had, several $1,000s in the bank, whatever, but it was freedom. Because if my dad wanted to get in his truck, drive to Texas or to California and visit his kids for a month, he could. If he was having a good time and said, I'm going to stay another 2 weeks. Nothing's going to fall apart. Just the ability to live where you want to live, wear what you want to wear, drive what you want to drive, be who you want to be. And I think that's, we were created to live in that kind of, posture.
Yeah.
And I think it's under attack, maybe not intentionally, but inadvertently. That is what is a little bit under attack right now. So what I'm always encouraging people to do is listen. It takes level-headed, sound-thinking people to fight against this and to preserve freedom. But you don't do that by showing up at a Capitol with Confederate flags, an AR, and breaking all the rules kind of thing. You got to be strategic, calculated, and your life needs to show the fruit of freedom. In other words, what have you done with all this? You live in a country where you can do what you could do in no other country on the planet. What have you done with it?
I love it. That's great. Thank you. Stephen, if people want to connect with you online, follow you, learn more about you, get your books, hire you to come speak, learn about your events, any of that, how can they do that? SteveMillerSpeaking.com. That's kind of the hub. That's the website. Of course, I'm on social media. The two primary ones are Steve Miller Speaking. That's the tag on Facebook. Yeah.
Stephen Miller Inspired is our Instagram. And, I'm not the most technical guy, so I don't venture out much further than Facebook and Instagram right now. But the website's really the hub.
Yeah. It is time consuming.
SteveMillerSpeaking.com.
It is time consuming to stay up on that. And I would encourage everybody listening to go ahead and follow Stephen and get to know more. There's so much here on your story we didn't touch. We didn't touch the amazing story of your son and his illness and how he overcame that and what he became. All those things. I mean, so much to get into, to explore. It's really worth it. Pick up his books, learn about him. You will not regret it. I think anybody who follows you and learns from you is going to be well returned in the time and energy that they invest in it. So I'm very happy to have had the chance to sit down with you and share this part of your story with our community. I look forward to what's to come for you. And I thank you for being a part of what we do.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. And just say the word. We'll be back and finish it.
Yes, I would love to do a part 2 because there's so much more to you. And the story about your son is just powerful. And
there's a moment in his life that was connected to the moment my father gave me at 8 years old. That's very powerful to talk about.
I kind of want to do it now. All right, I'm not going to do it now. I'm going to, okay, let's do it. Do you want to do it? You want to go into it quick? I got to know.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. So my son was down in Nicaragua. Yeah. He'd started his own cigar company. So he's down there, walking through the farms and going through the whole process, quality control and all that. Anyway, while he's down there, he falls ill to a pulmonary embolism. He didn't even know that's what it was. I mean, he's a 6'4", healthy guy, athletic. But long story short, we finally, and he collapsed down there in front of his hotel room. And I mean, it was serious. By the time we got him back to LA, and got him to the ER, they rushed him back, did all these tests, and a trio of doctors, a pulmonary specialist, cardiac specialist, and the ER physician came out and told my wife and I we should sit down. We're still thinking it's an asthmatic reaction or something, even though we didn't have asthma. Maybe there's mold down there in the hotel or something. I don't know. We're thinking antibiotics and, we're good. And they set us down and they say, we don't think that your son is going to live through the night, for sure not the weekend. Because what had happened is he had walked around on there for so long with the pulmonary embolism, and then we'd put him up on an airplane 36,000 feet for a 6-hour ride back to LA. So the result was 80% of his lung tissue, they said, is dead, and he won't get that back. His heart is 2.5 times the size of what's normal. His liver is failing. His kidneys are failing. He's dying. So, that rocked our world. But long story short, because each section of the story can be a story of its own. But, God did a supernatural miracle in his life. And 4 days later, without oxygen, he was discharged from the hospital. Barely able to walk and still sick, still the heart enlarged, the lung tissue still dead, but could breathe on his own. So I fast forward, about 60 days, where now he's had a miraculous event in the middle of a worship service, like we described earlier, where his heart was healed. I mean, instantly it just went. He felt that he was trembling, he was shaking, and he's not a demonstrative guy like that. And it was a miracle. God just fixed his heart. So we're sitting on the front porch of our house in Long Beach at the time. And, on this porch swing, looking to the ocean, Stephen is sitting right next to me, my son. And while he's well at this point, there's not a heart issue, no issues, but it has done a number on his body. And he's still trying to get his strength back and, walk a longer distance or whatever. And I get a phone call from a company it's a big biker group that has done this West Coast biker rally every year. And they hire me to come out and do the entertainment because I do the Harley pull, which is a world-class, feat. I have the world record in that, in fact.
Of course you
do. And then, there's thousands of, Harley riders and bikers. So I can entertain them and then I can get up and talk about them because I've got something to say. And we checked the calendar date that they were asking. It was good. We booked it. I hung up the phone and I turned to my son and I said, Stephen, what would be ridiculous is let's don't say anything to anybody. And we show up for the event. And when it comes time to do the feat, I'll just back away from the straps. You walk up and grab the straps and you do the feat. Now, mind you, I got to set it up for 12 seconds. So even if you are in the world of strongman performing, that's not an entry level feat. That is 1,050 pounds of pull each direction.
Oh my gosh.
And you got to hold it together with your grip. And he's
How's it even possible? But all right, I digress. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, and he has, prior to him being sick, I couldn't beg him to go to the gym. That was not his thing. So to me, the strongman, legacy was coming to an end.
Right.
And at this point, he's 6'4", but he's like 170 pounds. He's not strong. He's learning to walk, all that kind of stuff. And so I said, you grab the straps and you do the feet. And he said to me, he goes, Dad, you think I can? And when he said that, I instantly heard this voice in me that said, choose your next words extremely careful, because this is his moment, like yours was at 8 years old. And I was aware when my dad just took the moment in the middle of a heroic thing and he said something to me that set the trajectory of my life. I knew I was getting ready to do that. I was going to say something that would shift Stephen's life. And so I just stopped for a second and I said, son, I know you can do this. This is what you were born for. And I'm telling you, 42 days later, he pulled the feet off. And from that moment on, every week of his life, he just continued to excel. And now he's surpassed where I was at my best, which is a father's dream. Now
Yes.
he's one of the top performing strongmen in the world.
Amazing. Amazing. And you two travel together and speak at events and capture people's attention at events the way you do. Truly amazing. It's such an extraordinary story. I'm so glad I got to share that. Maybe we'll just hold on to that for our community members and we'll just keep that one secret and like buy them because that's just cool. I don't know. It's just so cool. It's so interesting. I love that there's so many layers to you. And I really genuinely appreciate you taking the time to come and share it with us in our community and to stay in touch with us when you checked in on me, see how we're doing. It's just so sweet. Like you're just such a genuine good guy and we appreciate it.
Thank you so much.